We are not only biological machines, but we are biological machines that can know that we are biological machines. Your frontal cortex is the part of your brain that is the freest from genetic influences because it's still being sculpted by environment and experience a quarter century after you plopped out there, whereas most of the rest of your brain is sculpted by 2 or 3 years worth of experience. Whoa, we evolved, our genes evolved to free our frontal cortex from strict genetic determinism and to make it much more sculpted by environmental determinism. We are not only biological machines, but we are biological machines that can know that we are biological machines. Whoa, we evolved, our genes evolved to free our frontal cortex from strict genetic determinism and to make it much more sculpted by environmental determinism. Our behavior is the end product of what happened to us a second ago, a minute ago, an hour, a year, a decade, a lifetime, all of that. And I figured when I would lecture to audiences about this and take them through this, they'd all come away saying, oh, I get it, there's no free will whatsoever. And instead, there'd often be questions like, given all the stuff you were just telling us, it seems like there might be a little bit less free will than we often think. And I realized, oh God, the book was way too subtle. I have to write one now of just hitting people over the head saying there's no free will, there's no free will. So that's the follow-up book. We are not only biological machines, but we are biological machines that can know that we are biological machines. Whoa, we evolved, our genes evolved to free our frontal cortex from strict genetic determinism and to make it much more sculpted by environmental determinism. Everybody thinks they're seeing free will when we choose something. We're consciously aware of doing it. We know what the consequences are likely to be. Most importantly, we know there's alternatives available to us. And for most people, that's necessary and sufficient. There's free will. And my whole point is that misses everything that's going on because you're not asking the only important question, which is how did you become the sort of person who would have that intent at that point? And the answer is because of the biology over which you had no control, interacting with the environment over which you had no control, stretching from 1 second ago to the moment you were fertilized egg. And when you look at how that stuff works, there's not a crack anywhere in there in which you can insert sort of the everyday intuitive notion of free will. We are not only biological machines, but we are biological machines that can know that we are biological machines. Whoa, we evolved, our genes evolved to free our frontal cortex from strict genetic determinism and to make it much more sculpted by environmental determinism. Somebody behaves, does something or other, and why did they do that? Why did that occur? And part of the answer is, well, what went on in their neurons a tenth of a second ago? But what you're also asking is what stimuli in the environment in the previous minutes got those neurons to do that. And you're also asking, what did this morning's hormone levels have to do with it? And you're asking, what does the plasticity of the brain in the previous months to decades? Trauma, heartache, finding love, finding God, all of those things change the brain. And then before you know it, you're asking, what did the person's adolescence and childhood and fetal life have to do with it? What do their genes have to do with it? And remarkably, you gotta go even one step further back. What kind of culture were your ancestors inventing? Parentheses, in what sort of ecosystems, because that had something to do with it. Culture centuries ago, why is that relevant? Because your mother mothered you according to the ways in which she was raised in her culture, or translated a different way. Your brain was being constructed at that point as a function and part of what your ancestors were up to a millennium ago. And the key thing there in terms of distributed causality is like you're trying to figure out why somebody did something, and this is someone who had a car accident and had massive amounts of damage to their frontal cortex, and as a result they can't regulate their behavior. And it's easy for us to see where some unacceptable behavior of theirs came from. Yeah, massive brain damage. There's this big, massive cable of causal explanation going from that car accident to why they did what they did. Distributed causality is the much harder thing we have for people where there's not an easy explanation, because what you're doing instead is looking at the gazillion little microscopic threads of influence from your ancestors' culture and your fetal life and what color underwear you're wearing today and all of these things. And it's so much harder to not only see all these little microscopic threads, but to believe that when you put them all together, that is as causative of a cable as something as simple as like a massive car accident. It's easier for us to see in those cases. It's really hard to see that there's a gazillion things, each of which contribute 1 gazillionth of a percentage point to explaining what went on.